the interesting thing about what Matthew's doing here, again, assume since he's a Jew writing to fellow Jews, they're going to know the Old Testament backwards and forwards. They do. And so when he brings up the fact that, oh yeah, Jesus' ancestry, it passes through Judah by way of Tamar. Now that might leave some Jews kind of squirming in their seats, like, did you have to bring that up? Because that's a weird story. I mean, we typically skip it when we teach gospel doctrine. So why did you mention that? Because that is the first time a woman is mentioned in this genealogy. Typically, if you were to read any Old Testament genealogy, tragically, the people who do most of the work, namely the mothers, are sadly left out of the genealogical lines. It's he begat him, and he begat him, and he begat him. Well, isn't there always a mother involved? Well, yeah. Everybody knows that. But Matthew didn't mention that Abraham begat Isaac of Sarah. He didn't say that Isaac begat Jacob of Rebekah. He didn't mention that Jacob begat Judah of Leah. He left out the matriarchs. And as we talked seriously last year, we should never do that. But Jews were typically content to just go father to son. Then why on earth would Matthew say, oh yeah, this particular birth came from this particular mother? And it was Tamar. Now hold on to that as you go through the next couple of verses, 4 through 6. A bunch of other fathers of the sons, interrupted occasionally with a mother. And Aram begat Aminadab, and Aminadab begat Nason, and Nason begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Booz of Rahab. And Booz begat Obed of Ruth. And Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David the king, and David the king begat Solomon of her that had been the wife of Urias. Now what Matthew's just done is mention 3 more women in this long list of all males, father to son. And which women did he mention? He specifically chose Rahab and Ruth, and then couldn't even bring himself to mention her by name, but it's Bathsheba, her that had been the wife of Uriah. Now, what is he doing here? Part of the genius of Matthew is he doesn't seem to do anything without a reason. And if I learned this as I was trying to write my dissertation and other research papers. It's like, what's your thesis? Make it clear. And then if there's something, everything else you write better be arguing your thesis. Is it moving the ball forward towards that end zone? You're trying to make a point. And what was Matthew's point from the very start? Jesus is the Christ. So why bring up these women? Because he's trying to prove to his audience that Jesus is the Christ. Now, what's going to keep them from believing that already? Well, I've heard about this guy. Rumors flew throughout Nazareth that there was this woman that was pregnant before she got married. Ended up having the kid, and they named him Jesus. Salvation? Well, maybe he's trying to save your self-respect, but we know better. This was no honeymoon baby. This was an illegitimate child, and there's stronger words for that if you want to use them. He can't be the Messiah. So, sorry, Jesus, sorry, Mary, there's no option here. Now, Matthew knows that. Matthew knows that people are going to make false assumptions because there's a story that they think they know, but they don't know the details. How can I help prepare their minds to be more accepting of Mary's unusual marital circumstance? Oh, wait a minute. This is like family tradition for them. If you were to talk about these other 4 women, 4, all of them have some story in their background that suggests some kind of sexual impropriety, that on closer examination, don't jump to that conclusion. When Judah first meets Tamar and assumes she's a prostitute and goes in unto her, she wasn't. She did nothing wrong in that situation. And Judas himself admits it when he finally realizes what's happened. You were more righteous than I, he says to her. You were living the law of levirate marriage. I was not. Shame on me. But praise to you. Or what about Rahab? Now hers is a little more tricky because according to the book of Joshua, she ran a house of ill repute. But does that make her a prostitute herself? Was it more, I mean, it's tricky. Her story, we studied it in Joshua chapter 2, and then we get more about her in Joshua chapter 6. But the beauty of Rahab, despite wherever she'd been in the past, and maybe it was a colored background, but a glorious future, a troubled past, but a change and repentance and faithfulness, because among all the people of Jericho, her and her family were the only ones spared, and it was thanks to her. As we talked about her in our Old Testament study, there was conversion to the God of Israel there, despite the fact she was a Canaanite there in Jericho. This is Jesus already accepting outsiders to come in. And in the book of Matthew, no less. That sounds like something Luke would do. But as far as genealogy is concerned, don't be too quick to condemn her as being sexually immoral. This is a righteous woman. Same with the story of Ruth. That we always remember her for gleaning with Naomi. What we seem to sweep under the rug is her under Boaz's blanket. But if you remember that story from Ruth chapter 3, if I remember correctly, you might need to go back and re-listen to that lesson. It seems like a really odd circumstance as she kind of snuggles up next to him at night, though they're not married, and it's there on the threshing floor as he's out in harvest time, and even he wakes up and freaks out like, has something happened here? No. Just cover me under thy wing. Spread thy skirt over me. Thou art a near kinsman. It's as if she were proposing to him, and he accepts. And they are married shortly thereafter. You understand? Seems a little untoward, seems a little scandalous. Think harder. It isn't. And then with Bathsheba, this was adultery. But was it her fault? When you read 2 Samuel 11, this is all on David, and he knows it. This was not... What's Bathsheba supposed to do when the king brings you in? And so I think what Matthew is giving his audience there is, please do not be so quick to judge and condemn Mary for what you assume to be some sexual immorality. It looks like something's off here, but it isn't. This is family tradition. Get used to it. Okay.